Welcome to another edition of the DFS Build. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We're going to go over the Tuesday four-game slate at DraftKings. Really nice slate, cut in half basically what we did yesterday. Hopefully we can point you to the correct plays to help you build the best lineups possible. If we help you in this video, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to our channel, the DFS Build, so you can get alerted to future videos just like this. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero, a really cool lineup optimizer that you can use to get yourself a GPP takedown, and you can actually get 15% off when you sign up with them using our link in the video description below. All right, Taylor, let's get right into it. First game of the night, Warriors and Heat. Let me just double check. Jackson Davis is questionable, so him being out would be fairly substantial. Just because his role's been bigger lately, but everybody else is there for the dub. So, are you looking at dusting off Kevon Looney here, or are you looking at any other bigs? Like, obviously, Draymond Green would stand out a little bit more. But how do you feel about the Dubs here as they visit South Beach?
Not great. I think Green is the one that stands out the most for 6'3". Either way, minutes are fine. He's still good per minute, well over a fantasy point per minute. So. Don't mind that. Thompson, 5'7", is a little cheap, I guess you could say, off the bench. Decent him. His minutes have been down. Not really interested in that. Emski, 5 flat's a little cheap. I guess he's playable, kind of as a short slate value, but overall, I'm not seeing too much here. Bad matchup on the road. Not a very high total game. Yeah, not very exciting.
Yeah, I'm with you here. It's never fun to play guys against the Heat. I mean, Steph is always a good GPP play, I guess, but he just hasn't been that dude lately. His price has come down, though, just because he's not going to be owned and his price is decent. I think he's worth mentioning for GPPs. If Jackson Davis is in, he's an okay value at 5'2". If he's out, I agree with you on Draymond. And then Kuminga looks a little bit better at 6'6" as well. But for the most part, I'm not gravitating towards the Warriors at all. All right, for Miami, they actually have a lot of injury news to look over. Obviously, Hero and Duncan Robinson remain out. Jaquez, Caleb Martin, and Kevin Love are all questionable. If those dudes are out, that opens up some value for the Heat. But either way, obviously, it goes Bam and Jimmy and then Rozier. Those are the three guys we're looking at the most. Bam and Jimmy do project decently. And so they're the standouts here. So how are you feeling about them? Are you gravitating towards Rozier with the extra wings out? And what value on Miami do you like?
I don't think I really like any of it. I get that Patty Mills is in play. He's been starting. He's cheap, but he's Patty Mills. Maybe if those other wings are out, he's a little more playable, but not very exciting. I would prefer to not play him, especially into ownership. Kevin Love's questionable if he plays. I guess he's an okay punt. Like, I'd rather get to him than Kevon Looney, for example, but not a very exciting team either. Jimmy and Bam, like you said, are okay, but not priorities on this slate. Rozier hasn't really shown a ceiling since he got to Miami, so not the most alluring play, pushing 7K either. All things considered, the game looks pretty bad overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you get to Bam or Jimmy, I don't have a problem with that. They're good prices. They project decently. They both have 21% or north boom ratings. So they are fine. They're fine plays. They're just not necessarily standouts for the slate just because we have obviously Luka and we have a few other elites that we should be considering. So when you start spending your salary on those guys, it's a little bit hard to get to Bam and Jimmy and make them priorities. I think they're fine, though. Rozier also totally fine at 6.8K with those guys out. Jovic is totally fine as a value if those other big men for Miami are going to be out. He's going to start and get 15, 20 minutes anyways, but he looks a lot better all of a sudden if those dudes are out. And as gross as it feels, Mills and Wright are absolutely in play at these price points on a 4-game slate. All right, Lakers and Bucks, much more exciting game if it can stay close. Obviously, LeBron James is doubtful. So he's probably going to miss here. That tells us a little bit about the 9-point spread. This game does have a 231 total, though. So if it stays close, it could easily be the game of the night. And obviously, LeBron being out opens up some really nice mid-range plays in D'Lo and Austin Reeves. It also opens up some value. And obviously, Anthony Davis looks awesome with Brown out. So starting with the Lakers on this with this game, who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, the three you mentioned are obviously the standouts. AD, too cheap, power forward eligible. That helps his cause a little bit. As far as value goes, I guess Prince is the one that stands out the most at 4K, assuming he starts. Reddish is 3.2. I think that's cheap enough to get to him, just kind of as a full punt. I don't want to do that or feel good about it, but I think it's okay. Maybe Dinwiddie at 4.6, but he's come up a little bit after Russell missed the other night. Yeah, I mean, the obvious plays are obvious. I don't really think there's much edge to be gained by really going too deep on the Lakers. I think Rui's a little expensive, but maybe a bit of usage flows his way too.
Yeah, I actually like Rui a lot, especially that he's at that price because he's not going to garner ownership. The ownership is going to flock towards those punts that you're talking about, like Reddish. Obviously, Dinwiddie is 900 cheaper than Rui, not the same position, but still. And Taurean Prince, 4K, a lot of ownership going to Taurean Prince, and he probably is the right play on this small slate at that price. But Rui is going to go overlooked, and he's a safer play for sure. So I like him a lot, actually. I think as far as the Lakers go, you're absolutely right. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see who the standout plays are. But what you should consider is how to leverage these guys. I mean, if D'Lo is going to be pushing for 40% ownership and Austin Reeves is at 25%, maybe you fade D'Lo and you play Austin Reeves. Or maybe you're comparing Anthony Davis to Luka and Giannis and Sabonis. Just see where that ownership lies and then make your decision from there. For me, though, like, I'm already set to build around Anthony Davis tonight. His ownership's coming in at 24%. That's not high enough for the role he's going to have in the spot. And it's also, when you compare him to the other studs, he just looks like the best stud when you look at points per dollar and floor and ceiling here. So yeah, I'm starting with Brow, and I like all the Lakers quite a bit, as you should. All right, on the other side, you do have Giannis and Dame leading the charge for the Bucks. Chris Middleton is back and not very limited these days. Let me just actually double check how these guys are looking. Middleton is probable. He's been playing 25 to 30 minutes, so I think at 6.7 is kind of priced out, actually. But obviously, those are the first three guys. It starts with Giannis and Dame. How are you feeling about the Bucks, though?
Yeah, I think Middleton's the one I like the most, kind of by a lot. 6'7", played 32 minutes a couple games ago. I think the last game was kind of a blowout, so maybe the minutes were down a little bit. I think even 30 for him is okay at 6'7". Good per minute guy still. Usage is there. Lakers, not a good defensive team, played a fast pace. I don't mind paying for him at 6'7". Giannis, obviously a good play as leverage off of AD. I think there's going to be quite the ownership gap there, so I don't mind attacking that. Dame at 8.9 is not overpriced or underpriced. I think he's okay, but doesn't look like a priority. The rest of these guys, Lopez, Beasley, Portis, they're all just kind of secondary flyers you can consider at low ownership.
Yeah, I like the point about the ownership discrepancy for if Giannis is going to be completely ignored on a slate with Brow and Luka, then sure. I mean, anytime you have a low-owned superstar stuff like that, you do have to consider that. I'm not really very interested in Dame. His floor is pretty gross these days. He's a good price and everything, but it's just I never feel good about clicking his name. I also am not personally feeling awesome about Middleton. The price is good and the production has been solid. I don't fully trust Middleton. But beyond that, there's a lot of really good plays in mid-range tonight. So if you're clicking Middleton, then you might not be clicking one of these Lakers we talked about, or CJ McCollum, Jalen Williams, Terry Rozier. So I'd take all those guys over Middleton, I think, tonight. For the most part, though, it's going to be Giannis or bust for me. If I don't want to play Brow, if I decide not to go Brow because of ownership, I'd go Giannis. All right, next up we have the Thunder visiting the Pelicans. This game has a 223 total, 1 point spread. There's two games on the slate with 1 point spreads. So I'm just going to go out and tell you one of them is going to be an absolute housing just because that's how these tiny slates work, right? The games with the tight spreads go absolutely bananas, and the Lakers-Bucks game is going to be like 147 to 144 in triple overtime. That's how it goes. But we don't really want to play for blowouts anyway. So this game does look good in a vacuum. SGA obviously starts things off. His price has come down. He's pushing for 50 fantasy points at DFS Hero, 21% boom rating. Pels are not a good matchup, and it's on the road. But I can understand why you'd want some exposure to OKC. So on the Thunder side, who stands out for you?
I think it's more J-Dub and Chet kind of in the mid-range than it is SGA at the very top. Like he is kind of cheap. Like you said, not a good spot. There's other ways to spend money on this slate, namely AD, Sabonis, and Luka. I think Giddy is always a fine term at play in the mid-range just because he's a good per-minute guy, even though the minutes are quite suspect. Dort is the one I'm getting to the most. I hope he goes away because I don't want to do that. I think Isaiah Joe is also playable. If Cam is going to be some popular at 3-2, I think Joe as a direct pivot is okay, just for the same price, and just, it's within the range of outcomes for him to outscore Reddish. And if there's going to be a huge ownership gap, I don't mind playing into that. But yeah, there's intrigue with this team, even in a bad spot.
Yeah, I think Kason Wallace is probably the guy that stands out the most for me at 3.9K, especially on a 4-game slate where we're kind of starving for reliable value. It's always funny how it's relative to the slate, right? We play these guys that we otherwise would never, ever play. And Kason Wallace is one of them. I don't want to play Kason Wallace, but he's getting 22 to 24 minutes pretty consistently. And the other value sucks on this slate. So if we're actually looking at Patty Mills, yes, we can also look at Kason Wallace. So I think he stands out a little bit at that price. He's fine. And I'm with you, though. It's probably Chet or Jalen here. Anytime SGA is 5% owned or less, that is hard to ignore, I do think. I think of that trio, Jalen would probably be the guy I'd lean towards. His projection is comparable with Chet. Ownership is about 14% for both these guys. He's got a little bit better of a matchup, and he's cheaper. So he just feels like the easy call. But if you land on SGA, I don't have a problem with it. On the other side, Zion has ticked up to 9K flat. Technically, with Ingram out, not expensive enough. I don't really feel great about that price point on this slate. And he's carrying 18% ownership per DFS Hero. So he looks fine across the board, 24% boom rating. But I personally don't feel great about it. How do you feel about Zion and the rest of the Pels with Ingram sidelined?
Yeah, I'm probably going to look to the value more than anything else. The two I'm actually getting to the most are Alvarado and Larry Nance Jr., which is not super intriguing, but Alvarado 4-1, Nance 4-2. They're fine off the bench. They both have pretty solid roles. Nance seems to keep playing Joval off the floor, so he does have a path, even at center only. Joval, small slate kind of value. They have Chet on the other side. Maybe they need some size. I don't think he's the worst dart throw at 4-9, but it's just hard to have a lot of faith in him right now. McCollum, Trey Murphy should start for Ingram. I think he's okay at 6'4". I don't mind that. And it's a good spot for Zion. Like the Thunder don't rebound well and stuff. I think he's an okay play, but with all the other spends, I think it's going to kind of slip through the cracks for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm focusing more on the value here. I think Najee Marshall is even in play. He's looking at 20, 25 minutes off the bench here with Ingram out. I agree with your values here. And guys like Trey Murphy, Herbert Jones, if you land on them, totally fine. I think the Pels in general, they aren't priorities necessarily. I think the value, you could argue, is somewhat of a priority right now. But they're all just fine plays based off the usage spike that they're going to get with Ingram out. All right, game of the night, most likely. Tired Mavs going to Sacramento to take on the Kings. Huge game, 233.5 total, best total of the slate, 1-point spread. So this is going to be a complete housing, right? But we can't think about stuff like that anyways. The Mavs were in Utah or played Utah last night, back-to-back. Could be a little bit tired here, and the Kings are obviously not an easy matchup. But this could be a really fun DFS environment. Luka obviously leads the way of the entire slate with a 64-point fantasy projection. He does have a 28% boom rating. And the craziest part is he's coming in at sub 10% ownership. If we can get Luka at low ownership, we don't fade that. But are you looking to get away from Luka on the slate, with that 12.7K salary? And are there any other Mavs that you like tonight?
I'm not trying to get away from that, but it's kind of hard with no value really to get there at 12-7. Like the Lakers are okay, but most of them are expensive and they're in a good spot too. So I think they're just kind of the better plays. And they're the ones I'm prioritizing as of now. Obviously, it's a scary fade of Luka. He's going to be low owned at 13K-ish in the last game of the night. I would like to get there if I can. I'm hoping more value opens up and that I will be able to get to him more easily. Otherwise, it's kind of just Gafford and Washington as values. I think are okay. Gafford's minutes have been up a little bit of late. Irving, I don't mind as a really low on pivot. If someone like Dame is going to be somewhat popular, I think Irving as a more expensive alternative is pretty intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can make a case for a lot of different maps here too, just because the matchup and game environment is pretty good. Gafford's been crushing. So even with his price up to 6K now, you can use Gafford. PJ Washington plays 32 to 35 minutes. Just off of minutes and price alone, he's in play for me. You could argue Gafford has foul trouble with Sabonis. Absolutely realistic because he does have issues with that, and Sabonis is a problem. So Derek Lively as a bit of a leverage play there at 4.6K. Not the worst value play, in my opinion. Everybody else is kind of just there. I wouldn't use anybody beyond that. My question to you in regards to Luka, if you were going to use Luka, like if you were just hand building a single entry lineup, would you be just building around Luka, or do you think utilizing this value on this slate and like pairing him with another stud or like a high price mid-range guy is viable? Do you think that's stretching too thin, or would you just go Luka and then try to go balanced?
I mean, it's kind of hard enough to get Luka even with a bunch of punts. So I don't really think like pairing Luka and AD looks viable if that's what you're angling at right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm just kind of seeing how you feel about something like that. Because that is when people see these 4-game slates, when they see all these studs, you know there's a decent chance one or two of them are going to go off. There's a decent chance all of them go off. So you want the ceilings of these guys. So right away, people are going to think, oh, there's all these cheap guys that we're thinking about using anyways. So maybe we can go Luka Sabonis or Luka Giannis or Luka Brow. I got to tell you, I did it just for fun to start the day. It doesn't look good because you're looking at like 6 dudes at 4.5K and they all suck. So I would agree.
It's a lot easier to get to like AD and Fox or something like that, like a couple of other expensive guys. Fox under 9K.
Yeah.
Going to be popular, but I think he's probably the best play on the slate.
My initial lineup has AD and Fox, so I'm 100% on board. All right, so speaking of that, let's kick it over to the Kings and wrap this thing up. Sabonis leads the way with a really nice 55-point fantasy projection for Sacramento. Both he and Fox have 27% or higher boom ratings, so the system really, really likes them, as they should. The Mavs are a good matchup. Obviously, you noted Fox, sub 9K price. He looks awesome. So you don't really need to be convinced to play Sabonis or Fox. By the way, good point. Fox coming in with crazy ownership at 32%. I'm never really excited to play a pricier guy at ownership like that, but I don't know if I really want to get off of Fox regardless. Anyways, how are you feeling about the rest of the Kings? I know you like Fox and Sabonis.
Yeah, the three I'm getting to most, over 30% of the builds I did are Fox, Murray, and Monk.
Your boy, Malik.
It's like a Malik Monk slate. He's been pretty bad, but good matchup, pace-up game for both teams here. Dallas has been running at a quicker pace this year. Monk's pricey, but guard forward eligibility, pretty easy to get to. Murray, I'm never comfortable playing him if he's chalky, but it kind of is what it is. Nature of the state games, got to do. Harrison Barnes and Keon Ellis play enough to be viable values. They're not comfortable, but they are both 4-5. I think it's okay. Ellis, if he's going to be low owned, I think is a fine dart throw. We've seen the occasional ceiling out of him, kind of thanks to defensive stats. Obviously, very low floor though, because he gets no usage. This might be the team I'm getting to the most. This team and the Lakers look like the ones that stand out.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Yeah, I agree with you on Keon Ellis. He just, for this slate, 4.5K, he's just a good value. And right now his ownership is kind of in check at 12%, so that sounds pretty good to me. Keegan Murray looks good here, but he's had 2 really, really good games in a row. So with his inconsistency, he's going to flatline pretty soon here. So when you look at ownership, I think I agree. Normally I'd be into Keegan Murray a little bit at this price and with this matchup. But I think at the ownership, he's probably going to be pushing 20% at the end of the night. I'm probably going to be out on that. Speaking of ownership, let's take one look at the overall ownership as it stands at DFS Hero. D'Lo leads the way with 36% ownership. That might just tick up even more. And we've mentioned De'Aaron Fox. He's coming at second with 32%. Of the guys who have really high ownership right now, who are you most likely to fade or be very underweight on if you're building a lot of lineups?
Out of that group, I'd say Najee Marshall and Joval look like the shakiest options. Joval, like we've been saying, is playing 20 minutes a game at the most lately. Center only, I just think there are plenty of alternatives. I would not play him into ownership. If he's low owned, I think he's a fine dart throw, but if he's going to be, attracting attention, I think it's something easy to get away from.
Yeah, I agree with that. All those Pels guys are garnering ownership. So, I mean, I think they're fine plays, individually and with the slate. But if they're going to carry ownership, I would just pick my spots there and look somewhere else. And obviously, Keegan Murray is just a little bit down here at 17%. He's one of the first guys I would get away from because he's 5.9K and he's carrying ownership. All right, as far as boom rating goes, Anthony Davis is the #1 play of the slate when you look at his smash ability. I'm firm agreement with that. I really like Brow, and I'm currently pairing him with De'Aaron Fox. Ownership be damned. As far as boom ratings go, who is somebody that you're really confident in tonight that you are going to be overweight on or almost locking in if you're building one lineup?
Yeah, I think it's the Fox AD pairing, like you said. It builds itself. I think it's pretty easy to get there. Luka, 9% ownership there, staring us in the face is going to be intriguing. I would take the over on that. I just think people will try to force him in, even if the value doesn't pop out later in the day. I just think a guy like that's always going to be a little more owned than 9%, especially on a 4-gamer. So I think those guys stand out as the obvious top plays.
Yeah, the thing people need to remember is that while he is the best pure raw points projection play of the slate, you don't necessarily always need him to place high or win as long as he doesn't get 90. If he gets
at 1270, he has to get you 70 for you to be feeling okay about it.
But even if he gets you 70, I don't think he's necessarily
he's not a must. That's his floor that you have to have is 70. I'm saying he can certainly get less than that, and you're busted basically.
Yeah. So when we got guys like Giannis, Sabonis, and Brow and SGA, even I'm leaning towards a non-Luka slate at this point. As much as I hate fading him, I'll probably enter a couple lineups, building around Luka. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Hopefully we helped you out. If we did, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck tonight.